Took you past the courthouse gate with winter on the stone. You raised your voice when others bowed and faced the cell alone. A folded letter in your coat, a photograph of home. The guards can lock an iron door, but they can't own what you've known. We're waiting on Reiner, a good man standing tall, for every hand that would not bend, for every voice they stall. The years may mark the calendar, the walls may hide your face, but truth is walking toward you still, and freedom knows your name. Your mother keeps the kitchen lights until the morning train. Your brother reads the news aloud and says your name again. A little flag beside the sink, a cup you used to hold. Small things become a kind of oath when courage has a cost. We're waiting on Reiner, a good man standing tall, for every hand that would not bend, for every voice they stall. The years may mark the calendar, the walls may hide your face, but truth is walking toward you still, and freedom knows your name. No tyrant writes the final line, no prison seals the sky. A nation hears the quiet ones who chose not to comply. And when the heavy doors swing wide, we'll meet you in the rain, not as a symbol carved in stone, but as our friend again. We're waiting on Reiner, a good man standing tall. You kept your heart when power came to make the brave feel small. The years may mark the calendar, the walls may hide your face, but truth has crossed the border now, and freedom knows your name. Keep the kitchen light on, keep one place beside the flame. We're waiting on Reiner, and freedom knows your name.
Reiner, I'm sorry about the delay.
Hey, no problem at all. It's evening here, so good evening, Reiner. It's finally this is here, so it's great.
Yeah.
So can we begin? Because I don't know if you remember me, but we did one interview. We did one interview years ago,
Yes, I do.
and
Yeah.
and in that time, I really thought you then. I mean, you were such a pivotal character in this COVID debacle. You were the leader of the unofficial leader of the movement. You know what I mean? You gave such great hope to all of us. So it was clear that you were going to be a target to be removed and taken down, which is, I wonder if that's why we were so naive to think if we'll tell the truth, everything will work out for us. And
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just saying that there I was. There I was in a pub talking to you in Germany. I think you were in Germany. Here I am now in a bus, because I tour Australia interviewing people, and you're in a jail. So I'm wondering if we could start, because this is an audio,
Yes.
if you could give us a description of what your jail cell is actually like.
Okay, no problem. Well, it's the size is about eight square meters. Part of this is occupied by a mini bathroom with a toilet and a sink. But other than that, there's only a bed and a very small desk. But this is different from most of the other inmates. I have an electric typewriter because I'm a lawyer, and of course, I have more or less decided what legal strategy our defense team should go. And that's because I have, I don't want to be a blowhard, but I have much more experience as a trial lawyer than any of the other lawyers on my team. We are about 10 or 11 lawyers, but I kind of lead the charge. So that's why I have a typewriter, an electric typewriter, and I use it to prepare all these different briefs that we needed to write, and that we're still writing, because now the focus has shifted from the criminal case to a civil case for damages, which is not limited to monetary damages, but which also includes an injunction to immediately release me because this was an abduction for political persecution.
Yes.
That is a violation of Article 16 of the German Constitution. It translates directly into what both the German Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court call an extreme outlier case, And that means that I have a claim for damages, including as I just explained, including the prohibition to incarcerate, which means, as far as the injunction is concerned, which means that they have to release me immediately. So that much, I think there's nothing else I can tell you about my cell here, though.
Yeah, it's despairing to think of you there, because you're a man who's been fighting for freedom, who's defending our freedom when they were taking our freedoms away. We've had all these other, Fauci is not in jail, all these other revelations, and people should be in jail, and yet literally the only person in jail is you,
Yeah, well, but the thing about Fauci, he is, by the way, responsible for this, because back when I was not allowed to re-enter the United States, this is in late January of 2023, I was going to fly. My wife Inka and I had done a number of interviews. I had flown at the end of 2022, I had flown to Bucharest in Romania in order to do an interview with the former UN executive and my now friend Kalin Ceausescu. Inka and I were both in Bucharest. He's the guy who then later explained in a very popular video interview that the UN had been taken over by the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Then I did another interview in Britain with the authority on microwave radiation. That's Barry Trower, former MI5 and MI6 agent. And then Inka and I flew to Peru to do an interview with one of my colleagues from Canada, who lives someplace in the Sacred Valley, and to do an interview with one of the shamans there. And then when I wanted to fly back to the ranch from Lima in Peru, the airline told me that I couldn't board the plane because my right to re-enter the United States had just been revoked. Now, that was still under the Biden administration, which, together with Fauci, did everything to keep a lid on the truth about the pandemic.
Yeah.
So he is responsible for that. Plus, of course, the German section of the transnational deep state. And that's how I then was, in October of 2023, abducted by the German government and they try to cover this up as an extradition, which means the Mexicans want me out of there. That's fake because the Mexicans have already testified that this is fake. And when I landed in Germany on the 13th of October, they tried to make it look as though it was, the Mexicans were forced to make it look as though it was a deportation,
Yes.
and the Germans then made it look as though it was an extradition, but it was neither.
It was so it was an abduction. Can you tell us what was the abduction like?
Weird. My wife and we had been living in Mexico at a friend's house, American friends from Oregon, and one morning, my wife found that our passports were gone. And we couldn't find them. So I wasn't sure, and she wasn't sure, had we maybe misplaced them or had somebody come into the home and stolen them? We still don't know. So I called the German embassy and I told them that we probably needed new passports, but that I had already gone to the local police and explained this to them so that we would be able to, even without our passports, to travel inside Mexico or to any other place. So they said, yes, we're going to give you new passports, but you're going to have to fly to Tijuana. This is in July, I think, June or July of 2023, in order to fill in some forms with the consulate there. And the honorary consul was there, and he actually helped us fill in the forms. Also asked me if I knew a doctor who would be able to get the toxins out of his body, because when he realized who I was, he said, "Oh my God, I may have made a very bad mistake. Can you help me and connect me with a doctor who can get this shit out of me?" So then we flew back, because he told us this is going to take about 4 to 6 weeks, then the new passports will come in and we're going to send them to you. And probably UPS or something, FedEx. And but then when we were back at our home with the dogs and everything in southern Baja, all of a sudden the passports reappeared. And I called once again. I called the embassy and I said, "Look, I don't need the passports any longer. I'm willing to pay for whatever expenses this may have incurred, but I don't need them anymore." They told me, "Oh, this is too bad because we have already annulled the passports. You're going to have to come and pick up the new ones." And I said, "Why pick them up? Why don't you send them?" Because that's what a consul told me. "Why don't you send them via FedEx or UPS or whatever?" No, you have to do this in person. And this is when a good friend of ours, a German, told us, who also lives there. This is a large community of about 3,000 people, most of them from the United States and Canada, some from Europe. Most of them had fled their countries because of the corona measures. Many of them came with huge motorhomes, had sold everything, and were building themselves new homes right by the Pacific, which is beautiful. So this guy told me, "Don't do it, Reiner. Don't fly there, because all of this sounds." He's originally from Romania, so he's probably much more in touch with spirituality than we are. So, and I said, "Nah, we're going to have to do it, because if I don't have a passport, sooner or later I will get somebody will do something about it." Yeah. So Inka and I flew to Tijuana in order to pick him up, and right at the airport, she got off the plane first because she was sitting in the front row, and I was sitting at the very back because the plane was overbooked. And right at the airport, just when we got off the plane, we were, both of us, arrested by 5 or 6 armed and uniformed migration officers who were really nice to us, by the way. But they didn't. They spoke, of course, no German, and hardly any English. And when we kept asking them, "Why are you doing this? What are you charging me with?" they said, "We don't know. We can't tell you, but when you reach, we're going to take you to the migration authority, which is about 20 minutes from here. And there's the director of the authority, and he's probably going to be able to tell you." So that's where we were taken. It was a 20-minute drive, full speed, sirens blaring as though we were terrorists or something. because this is what the Germans had told them: make it look as though you're arresting a very dangerous individual.
Yeah.
So we arrived at the migration authority, and we were then almost welcomed by the director and then what we think is his deputy. They were really, really kind, and they kept apologizing to both of us. We're really sorry to have to do this to you. We don't know what this is about, but we're expecting that somebody's going to tell us. And then they told us, we're not doing this to you because we have no reason to arrest you, as you have neither entered the country illegally nor have you committed any crime in this country. And I said, well, what is going on here? And then one of the two went into a back office and came back with a fax that had just arrived. And then they told us, it's the Germans who want you because of your corona investigation work.
Yeah.
They knew me because one of them had watched some of our shows, some of the Corona Investigative Committee shows and some of the ICIC's shows. And then they said, well, I'm really, really sorry, Dr. Fuellmich, we're going to have to send you back to Germany because the Germans want us to do it. But then, of course, my wife started to cry, and I tried to calm her down, and they let her go. Because obviously she didn't have anything to do with the Corona Investigative Committee's work or ICIC's work, or for that matter, with my work in general. They kept her there. They flew me first to, this is on October the 11th, they flew me first to Mexico City, where I had to spend the night in a huge room where tons of people who were obviously going to be deported were staying, no showers, nothing. And then the next day, two migration officers who were paid for, as we now know, because it's all in the prosecution's case file, paid for by the German government. So this was a fake extradition. Wow. They accompanied me to Germany. My wife had to spend a night in a prison cell, even though they had nothing on her. The reason is that the Germans ordered it, and they also took away her cell phone so that she wouldn't be able to call an attorney. Because had an attorney been able to talk to me, even in Mexico City, because I was there for a whole night, this whole scam would have blown up. As at that point in time, there was only a fake arrest warrant, which accused me of having stolen money or having taken a loan with the intention to never pay it back, and plus the loan, this is what the fake arrest warrant says, was totally illegal and against corporate law. This is all stupid and wrong, of course, as much, much later came out during the trial. But at that point in time, had somebody, an attorney, been able to help me, and had this attorney been presented with that fake arrest warrant, the whole case would have exploded, and they would have immediately have to let me go. That's why they denied me the right to an attorney, and that's why they didn't want me to get a fair hearing.
It's incredible. Look, I have been grokking, and grok is not your friend at the moment, especially in Australia, but yeah, so we hear about the embezzlement charges and stuff like this, which you've just covered. But I asked it, how common is it for Germany to put this much pressure on a foreign government to extradite someone for a crime that even they admit is less than €1 million? They said literally never happens. So,
well, the original... it is totally unusual. It has never happened before. Yeah. And even if somebody would have in Germany would have decided to get an extradition proceeding started against me for the original charge was violation of the fiduciary duty. This is a civil case, by the way. Yeah. It should have been tried in a civil court, and it is being tried in the civil court now because I filed this civil complaint with an accompanying motion for a preliminary injunction. But there's also now there's a shift that has happened over the last 2 or 3 weeks. There is now an investigation of the prosecutor who had me abducted in Mexico. There are going to be criminal charges filed against him. The attorneys turned agents for the deep state for the German variation of MI5. It's the Domestic Intelligence Service, but it's really it has turned into a domestic terrorist group. I'll spare you the details, but they're involved in at least 12 murder cases, but I'll spare you the details. So under ordinary circumstances, someone who is charged with having taken out an illegal loan, which is really a civil case, with damage to the people who alleged damage to the people who then charged me, or rather wrote the criminal complaint that set it all in motion. Ordinarily, 350,000 euros, that's the damage that they think that they suffered, even though they had stolen 1.58 million from me. I'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, this would never have happened, not even an extradition.
Yeah.
You don't go, this is an economic crime, if you want to call it that. Not a violent crime, no serial killings or anything. No way they would have started an extradition. So that's why in this case, and for the other reason that they didn't want me to be able to tell my side of the story, they simply decided to do an abduction. But the real scandal behind all this is that the deep state, the German Domestic Intelligence Service, which is who in charge. There's one person in charge of that, and that's the government. In this case, it's the Secretary of the Interior. She's in charge of the Domestic Intelligence Service and of the German version of the FBI, which is called BKA. So those institutions came after me. It's all in the case file of the prosecution.
Yeah.
And the first time they went after me because of my work at the Corona Investigative Committee, that was in late 2021/early 2022. They wrote directly to the DA's office in Göttingen asking them to invent a crime against me, for example, fraud or violation of a fiduciary duty. And but they were so sure of themselves that they had not expected that there's still a few people in Göttingen that are not corrupt. So the case ended up on the desk of the one not corrupt senior prosecutor. Her name is Reiner. She did a very, very detailed preliminary investigation. She watched some of our shows. She looked at everything, looked into our books, etc., etc. She knew about the loan contracts. We also bought some gold in order to protect part of the donation money from the state seizing it, because we were warned that the state would do this by an American journalist who I really trust. So she looked at everything, and she then wrote, one, I don't see anything of relevance as far as crimes are concerned. This is perfectly legal. They did exactly, or I did, because I was the face of the Corona Investigative Committee, they did exactly what they promised the donors to do, to provide a thorough analysis of what had happened during the pandemic in order to hold the government that literally suspended the German constitution during the pandemic instead of protecting it, in order to hold them to account. And this is, by the way, exactly the same thing that the former president of the German Constitutional Court, a highly regarded professor of law by the name of, Hans-Jürgen Papier, this is exactly what he has been demanding over and over and over again. He says the German legal system, including the Supreme Court and the Constitutional Court, has failed the Germans during the pandemic because instead of protecting the Constitution, they suspended it. And he's been calling for a thorough legal investigation ever since. And this is what he's going to get because this is what we're going to do. They're not going to be able to stop me. We will start Nuremberg 2.0. We've been preparing for this behind the scenes, and we're now ready to go.
Can I just go back a bit, because I've just been reading about you now. Can you just show how awful they were to you once you got back to Germany, and how they treated you in jail from your months of isolation, which contravenes all the United Nations rules and EU rules when it comes to isolating a prisoner. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, this is probably what's going to break their backs. Just like the ritual child abuse cases, Epstein cases will break the monsters' backs. When the judge who was running the show and who also did the prosecution's work, when he realized that the prosecutor in charge was just an idiot. You know, what had happened is the second attempt, the first attempt, as I just described, it failed because it ended up on the desk of this one woman who still tried to uphold the rule of law. She even told, by the way, the Domestic Intelligence Service to go to hell. I mean, she used much nicer words, but that's what she did. She wrote them that she is not going to simply follow illegal orders and start a criminal proceeding against someone who has not committed a crime. But then, 2.5 months later, the Domestic Intelligence Service used 3 of their agents. 2 of them had worked for the Corona Investigative Committee for a couple of months until we realized that these people were plants and were only after the money. One of them, we found out, had been working for the deep state, for the German Domestic Intelligence Service, and for the secret police for many, many years. So they activated those 3 guys and made them, this is 2.5 months after the woman refused to open a criminal investigation. My former co-host, Viviane Fischer, I had written her an email. This is in August of 2022. I had written her an email explaining that I and Inka and my dogs, we would move back to our ranch, but that I would continue to work with her on the Corona Investigative Committee. But I was sick and tired of her because she's such a chaotic person. She doesn't even finish her sentences. I didn't want this to become public, but I told her as much in that email. And I told her, by the way, I'm going to sell the last one of our homes. We had 5 pieces of real property in Germany. I'm going to sell the last one of our homes, and I'm now renting a new place for my law firm, but I'm in the process of paying back the loan that I had taken out. And the moment she understood that this would probably cause her a lot of problems, because if I wasn't sitting in Berlin with her and doing the Corona Investigative Committee, but rather I would be joining her via Zoom, this would probably damage her reputation. But I had just had it with her. So she decided to send this email to the 3 attorneys, 2 of whom had been members of the Corona Investigative Committee, but we had kicked them out about a year or so earlier because we understood that these people were working for the deep state and were only after the donations. She actually, and I still to this day, I can't understand it. She contacted them, gave them my email. They, of course, forwarded it to the Domestic Intelligence Service, and they realized, oh my God, if he is going to pay back the loan, we're not going to have anything to pin on him.
Yeah.
And that's when it all started. They wrote very quickly and hastily a criminal complaint, and in order to avoid the senior prosecutor to once again refused to start a criminal investigation, they transferred a young and inexperienced a prosecutor from the city of Hanover to Göttingen, changed the file number so that now he was in charge of this case and not the other woman, because she would have, the senior prosecutor was in the process of once again telling them to go to hell.
Yeah.
She wouldn't start a criminal investigation. So she was out of the way. They started this criminal case. This guy never investigated anything, and then based on a totally false criminal complaint, which might have been written by idiots, because if you look at it, it's so amateurish. It's a hastily written criminal complaint based solely on this totally false criminal complaint. The prosecutor issued an arrest warrant on March the 15th. Now, to make a long story short, and in order to answer your question, the judge, when he finally realized that I had taken charge of my own defense, this is on May the 3rd of 2024, when the judge, instead of throwing the case out and letting me go when his case collapsed, because this were not illegal loans, it turns out he invented new charges, and he said, oh, we're not going to go after you for illegal loans or loans that are in violation of corporate law, which, as I said, is a civil case, really.
Yeah.
But from now on, we're going to go after you because you violated a secret agreement between yourself and Viviana Fischer, my former co-host. And the defense said, what? I mean, where's the secret agreement? Well, it doesn't exist in writing. Well, how has it been entered into if not in writing? He said, oh, not orally either.
What?
I believe that there is such an agreement, and I construe this from the loan contracts. Well, we said, well, the loan contracts are loan contracts. If we had wanted anything else but a loan contract, we would have done so. We're both lawyers.
Yeah.
Said no, and then we said, we need to respond to this. Give us a couple of weeks in order to understand what this is really about, and then we're going to name witnesses in order to refute the new allegation. And he said, no, I think this is it. This has been going on for long enough. I'm going to close the oral arguments, and I'm going to ask you to I'm not going to hear any of the defense's witnesses because I don't need them. This is a scandal in and of itself. And I'm going to ask you to immediately start with your final pleadings. So that's when he realized that from now on, I was taking charge of this because I understood that even though I had good lawyers with me, but most of them were really, really very afraid because they were being threatened. One of the attorneys received anonymous emails, which we now know come from the deep state, from the three attorneys who had filed the criminal complaint. He received pictures of his young daughter, which of course meant to him that she was in danger. So that's why I took over. When this guy, the judge, his name is Schindler, when he understood that I was taking over and that I had, again, I don't want to blow my own horn, but I have tried many, many more cases than most of the other attorneys in Germany.
Yes.
And I have interviewed between 2,500 and 3,000 witnesses over the years. So I took charge of this. He understood that this was dangerous, and that's when what you were referring to happened. He ordered the prison to subject me to what is called these measures of white torture, which means from I think this is May until late November of 2024, they kept me in solitary confinement.
Yes.
I was isolated from all of the other prisoners. Even my daily rounds, they call it a free hour, which is when you get to go outside in order to get some sunshine. Usually you do this with all the other prisoners, but I had to do it in isolation. And whenever one of the other prisoners, I had helped many of them with their own motions, with drafts for their attorneys, because many of them had public defenders who didn't really care about their cases. So I wrote drafts for them so that they would be able to tell their attorneys to use this. Many of them supported me, opened their windows, and tried to motivate me by,
Oh, wow.
yelling stuff like, keep going, Reiner, don't give up, we're on your side. Whenever that happened, because this they forbade, whenever this happened between 5 and 10 officers of the special security team would go up there and beat them up. In one case, one of the prisoners almost lost an eye. So that's what they did, kept me in solitary isolation for 6 months. They, whenever they transported me from the prison to the courthouse and back, there were special guards, police officers in between 5 and 6 vans full of police officers, which were carrying machine guns and, of course, pistols and machine guns. Were also wearing bulletproof vests, so that the public would think that this is a dangerous terrorist.
Yes.
And at one point, I was taken to a doctor because I called in sick one morning, and instead of taking me to the courthouse, of course, they took me to the doctor. But instead of taking me to the medical department at the prison, they drove me once again, sirens blaring, full speed, 5 vans full of police officers with me. They drove me to the private practice of this doctor. I was wearing a suit because I was supposed to be at the hearing that morning. I was handcuffed, shackled, all kinds of chains hanging around me. And the people who were there, the patients, older patients, they looked at me and they couldn't believe it. Their mouths opened, they gaped at me, and obviously the image of someone who was wearing a suit and looked like a normal person, didn't have any foam at the edges of his mouth, and people threatening him with pistols and machine guns didn't make any sense to them. And then they took me into the examination room of the doctor, 2 of these people, and then the doctor, who himself is a drug addict and an alcohol addict, he's the one who runs the medical department at the prison. He asked me, what symptoms are you complaining about? And one of the guards was pointing his machine gun at me. Later, however, when I got out of there, he apologized to me and he said, I was following orders, Dr. Fuellmich, but I really hate this. This is not going to happen again. They're going to have to ask someone else to do it. And if you need me as a witness, I will testify for you. So there were lots of people, even at this concentration camp style prison, which is run by a psychopath who thinks that she is a doctor of psychology. Even there were some correctional officers who were on my side, because if they looked into my file, they could see that obviously this was not a criminal.
Yeah.
So on top of this, when my sister, who is a nurse, when she told me, look, Reiner, our mother has maybe another 10 or 12 days to live, you should make sure that you're going to be able to see her again, they refused to let me see her. Then she died, she passed away, and they also refused to let me participate in her funeral. They placed insane, or let's put it this way, mentally disturbed inmates right next to my cell, in the cell adjacent to mine, that would yell and scream all night long so that I wouldn't be able to prepare for the hearings. When they finally shipped him off into a psychiatric institution, one of the correctional officers told me, Reiner, this has never happened to anyone here before, not even to the most extreme and the most violent inmates. You've got to do something about it. The next thing they did is they placed a very violent and dangerous migrant from one of the African countries, from one of those war-torn countries next to mine. He was not allowed to be out in the hallway or to do his daily round with any of the other prisoners because he was so dangerous. But of course, he was allowed to be out in the hallway when they handed out the food to me. So he attacked me.
Oh,
I was
no.
getting ready. I'm not kidding you. I was getting ready to kill him. Well,
Yeah, you're in
I'm not
prison. I
going to go
mean,
into
these
the details
are
of
the
it,
horrors.
but that's when one of the wardens told me, "Look, Reiner, you're going to have to file a criminal complaint because this is getting totally out of hand." So that's, in a nutshell, what was happening.
I mean, it's easy to think that he could be paid a load of money to actually hurt you properly, to even kill you. You know, I'm not saying. I'm just saying that that's. You could see that that could happen. Can I just ask though, when you were isolated, and you had no phone, you couldn't contact the outside world. I've got a doctor over here who was challenged the narrative. He spent 5 days in isolation. He said it was very difficult. How did you survive that?
Well, the most important piece of help, if you want to put it that way, is that I received so much mail from so many people from all over the world, letters and postcards, and I was still able to talk to my wife, only 20 minutes a week, and all of these phone calls were being monitored, but it was still, it is probably that what helped me survive this, plus I don't know if I told you this before, but I had a great childhood. My father was, to me, he was a leading police officer in the town of Bremen, and to me, he was always a hero. And he would, when I was little, my sister's 2 years younger than I am. He would take us, my sister and me, quite regularly, he would take us on tours of the city of Bremen, which had been totally destroyed during the war. But the center of the city, the marketplace, with the town hall, there is a statue of the Knight of Roland carrying a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, and beneath his or between his legs there's a what today would be called a handicapped person, a crippled person. And my father, and the statue faces what in Bremen is called the Dome, which is a large church. And my father would always tell us, this statue of the Knight of Roland is the symbol of justice. And without justice, there cannot be peace and there cannot be freedom. So whenever you see that somebody is being treated unjustly or even beaten up or something, you're going to have to step in and do something if you can. Yeah. You must do this. And I always remembered this, and I believe that many years later, after I'd become a soldier in officer school, et cetera, but I wasn't able to follow orders from idiots. So many years later, I decided I'm going to study law, and I think this is because of what my father said. And I could always depend on him. He would always help whenever any of us, my sister, my brother, or I needed any help. He would always help us. And so this is probably a kind of inner core that has either developed over the years or that has always been there. But with the incredible support I was getting from all over the world, plus my wife, who I was able to talk to, even though we couldn't really freely talk because the talks were being monitored. I think this is what made it possible for me to survive this.
So they definitely were trying to break you then, because it's unprecedented. Your treatment is unprecedented as well, is what I've seen. From what I've seen. Yeah.
This guy was trying to break me, obviously, and but it didn't succeed.
Yeah, and even like just saying about your mother, and I know you've told the story and I've read about it, but were you close to your mother as well?
Yes, my mother was she was a very beautiful woman, but she was also a very tough woman because during the war, her father had moved the family from Bremen because the city of Bremen was being bombed out by the Allied powers. And he had moved them to a very small town where my grandmother lived. And they one day, because at the very end of the war, the Americans, and this is exactly where the American forces and the British forces met, but there were still some idiots, some very young idiots and very old idiots who were trying to show the world and Hitler, of course, that they were so brave that they were going to fight back, both the Americans and the Brits. So the Brits and the Americans responded and used their tanks and fired at anything that was moving. And the house where my grandfather had moved the family to, my grandmother's house, my great-grandmother's house actually, was burnt down completely with everything in it. So my mother didn't even have any clothes. They had to borrow clothes from the neighbors, and she didn't have any shoes. And so for about a year, she would have to walk. Even in wintertime, she would have to walk to get a train that would take her to the school, and without any shoes. So she was a very tough woman.
Yeah. I just find it so cruel not to even go to the funeral. You know what I mean? For something that is a civil
totally
case,
unheard of.
and it's only small. I know it's this, but it's profoundly evil. I think is a way. You know, a true lack of humanity. Can I ask? The appeal also has been thrown out. What happened with the appeal?
They rejected it and informed us of this on August the 18th. So this is only about a week ago. And the appeal, the rejection itself is extremely strange because it bears the date not of, as you would expect, August 17th or 16th, but March 17th. So what I believe has happened is that there was a fight amongst the five. This is a five-judge panel. There was a fight amongst them because, not everyone in the judicial system is crooked. Not everyone is corrupt. In fact, there were a couple of active prosecutors and judges helping us from behind the scene. Of course, I can't name any names because they're going to lose their jobs. But that's just to say that not all of the judges in the system are corrupt. So we were thinking that maybe up there at the Supreme Court, maybe two or maybe even three of the judges would, if looking at the file, would decide, no, this has gone way too far. This has got to stop. This is a slow slide into willful and arbitrary law, which is really lawlessness. And at the same time, as everybody could see now, it's so obvious, this country is sliding into totalitarianism. So we were hoping, of course, you know that no one who becomes a justice at the Supreme Court is not in line with the government, but we were still hoping that for some of them, this wouldn't be true. And I think there's lots of evidence that points in that direction, because that's probably the reason why it took them so long, and that's why they backdated the decision. How do we know that they backdated it? Because up until July of 2026, when either the defense lawyers or the other courts that were involved in this, the district court and the lower court, the regional court, all of them were told by the Supreme Court that they hadn't reached a decision yet. This is in writing. In the prosecution's case file, there's a handwritten note by the prosecutor, John, the guy who they transferred from Hanover to Göttingen, and he says in that note, this is dated July 1st of this year, the the Supreme Court notifies us that the appeal has not been decided on. So, but they backdated it because they were now in trouble because there's the principle of speed. Whenever somebody, an accused or defendant, is not out of prison but in prison, which should be the exception, but in my case it was, and in many other cases it's the rule, then they have to speed things up, which means ordinarily no one should be kept in pretrial detention for more than 6 months. But in practice, this is irrelevant now. But there are rulings both by the German Constitutional Court and by the European Supreme Court which say that if you want to keep someone in pretrial detention for over a year, you need to have extraordinary circumstances. And if you want to keep someone in pretrial detention for over 2 years, it's even worse. It is actually impossible. Now, at the time that I was notified of, or my attorneys were notified of the ruling, which is on August 18th, I had been kept in pretrial detention for over 2 years and 9.5 months. So that's why we believe they backdated it. Yeah. But now they have presented themselves with another problem because according to the Supreme Court and the Constitutional Court, any ruling must be immediately delivered to the defendant and his defense team. Immediately means within a couple of days. 6 weeks is way too late. Now they have a problem because if the ruling had really been written on March the 17th, then we now have 5 months between the actual ruling and the time that we were informed about it. One of my attorneys has actually written to the court and wanted them to know what is this about. And they said, oh, look, many others have asked us this because the public is interested in this case as well. Mm-hmm. But here's the explanation. The sentence, which only says that the appeal is rejected, was written on the 17th of March. But then they needed to think about why they had rejected the appeal, and that took them 5 months. I'm not kidding you. This is what is happening.
I just got to clarify that for myself.
Fucked up country.
I totally clarify. So they made the decision, and then they took 5 months to come up with the reason for why they made the decision.
Yes.
Wow.
And the entire decision, and there's not one word about the appeal, not one word about all of the mistakes that we listed in. There's 3 or 4 different attorneys who wrote different appellate briefs. Not one word, because obviously if they had to deal with the fact that this was an abduction for political persecution, which obviously is in violation of Article 16 of the German Constitution, which then constitutes an extreme outlier case, they would have let me go. That there's no other way. Of course, they could have tried to keep this from coming out, and that is exactly what they're doing right now. But there is a mini appeal that we're writing. I really didn't want to waste any energy on it, but we did write this mini appeal. You have to file it within a week, explaining to the court that this is going to, if they don't act on this, and if they do not actually tell us why they rejected our appeal, we're going to file criminal charges against them. But I believe I'm doing this because of the advice of my attorneys, but what I believe what is really going to be crucial is that civil complaint, because this is my home turf. I'm a civil lawyer, and I specialize in tort law. And there's one section, 839 of the German Civil Code. There's one section, and it's the only section in the entire German legal system that explicitly says that no one is above the law, not even judges and prosecutors, and that you can sue them in civil court for damages. In my case, as I said before, it's not just civil damage, monetary damages, but it also includes an injunction or prohibition to incarcerate, which means an injunction to immediately set me free. There's right now, since you're asking about the white torture, there was an expert opinion written on the effects of this white torture, of the devastating trauma that I suffered. This was written in December of 2024. We actually showed it to the court in Göttingen. This is months before they decided to send me to jail for 4 years and 2 months. They ignored it. They didn't care. There were people in the courtroom who were about to physically attack the prosecution. They ignored it. They didn't care. But now there's a very long expert opinion that's going to be written about what this white torture did to me, and we're going to file it with that civil. We're going to amend our civil pleadings, and we're going to file it, and then they won't have a choice. They will have to let me out.
Well, I do hope that. I do hope so. But I just want to go back, because the other thing you're dealing with is social media is where everyone's going to look you up, and we did the same to figure out questions for this interview, questions that aren't pertinent now, because Grok is basically saying you just ran off with the money, didn't tell anyone, but you're saying that there were contracts for the loans, which makes much more sense because you're a lawyer, you know?
Well, I know there's a number of people from the deep state, controlled opposition is what you call them. They get paid for writing these hit pieces.
Yeah. But
if you look at the real facts, and everything I'm telling you can be checked and rechecked and rechecked. I just published a 1 minute and 5. This is a week ago. A 1 minute and 1 hour and 5 minute complete account of what's been happening. You can also look into because we published all of the briefs that were written. You can check them out. You can look at the evidence that we have. So this is a complete lie by idiots who were paid for lying. The money is still there. They stole my fucking money. They stole 1.158 million euros.
Wow.
I only owed, as far as the paying back the loan, 700,000. They have the money. The deep state has the money. Even the gold is still there. We bought gold. I think we paid $1 million or so. It has either doubled or even tripled in value since then. Everything is still there. So anyone who says anything different is a fucking liar.
It's actually really great to talk to you. It's just great to hear your voice. You were an incredible beacon of hope, and you still are. But it's the world is in such turmoil. Can I indulge just to go back even further before the arrest? Well, why did you decide to set up the committee? What was the driving force to take on these powerful people? Because I know you took on Volkswagen, you beat them, took on Deutsche Bank, so you already had powerful enemies out there who did not like you. Why did you decide to take on this? Well, I'm not even sure what it is, but whatever this thing was that brought this bullshit pandemic and the vaccine and everything else, the vaccine passports, everything we've seen, what was the driving force behind that? I know you say about your father and that, but what was the driving force? And did you, at any point, even at the beginning, think they could really come after me for this?
Well, what triggered Inka's and my return to Germany in late May or early June of 2020 is we were staying at our ranch with the dogs at our ranch in Northern California. I was running my German office, which used to be 17 lawyers, but at the time we were down to 7, I think. I was running it from California because I was constantly in touch by phone and chat messages and emails with a senior attorney who had been with me for over 24 years, I believe. So everything was running smoothly, and just as I had done before the pandemic, I was traveling back and forth between Germany maybe 3 or 4 times a year, because some of our clients wanted me not to delegate the case or the hearing to someone else. Some of the more important cases, for example, they wanted me to try them personally. So that's why I had been commuting more or less between Germany and Northern California for quite a while.
Yeah.
But then we got the news that this was first happening in Germany, or at least we thought it was. That we got the news that this is in March of 2020, that all of a sudden what had started as a mild flu, and we all know now that it was no more dangerous than a mild flu. Even the WHO agrees with that with respect to the mortality rates, because this has been published over and over and over again by many different scientists, among them the highly regarded Professor John Ioannidis of Stanford University. So this was nothing but a mild flu. Yes, they may have tried to play with a virus, if there are viruses. Maybe it's something completely else. I tend to now believe that there are no viruses, but they keep using the virus fear because it's invisible. But I think I'm in good company, because there are many Australian doctors, and even Dr. Mike Yeadon, my friend Mike Yeadon, he believes now that there are no viruses. But at any rate, it hadn't been any more dangerous than whatever they did, even the gain of function experiments. It had not been any more dangerous than a mild flu. But then, all of a sudden, overnight, they changed their tune, and all of a sudden they said, oh, this is extremely dangerous. We're going to have, the only way out is a vaccine, but we're in the process of coming up with something, but you're going to have to wear masks, social distancing. And I thought, I can't believe this bullshit. I mean, I've been in medical and pharmaceutical law for 15 years, which is a part of tort law, by the way. So I spoke with Inka, and she said, look, we have to go back. You have all the connections. You have organized all of these international meetings in Göttingen, the conferences. You know the people, so you get them together for maybe an extended weekend, and then the government will understand that they made a mistake. Now, this was, of course, extremely naive, because we had no idea. This is when we decided to go back. This is late May. We had no idea that this was a concerted effort by what is now called the deep state, the transnational deep state, and that we were really up against monsters. I'm saying this deliberately. Some people call them psychopaths. I call them monsters, and because they have no empathy. They are, to a degree, some would call them insane. I just call them monsters. Yeah. So, but we didn't know that. I thought that we were going to be talking to reasonable people who just made mistakes in the government. So that's when Inka and I decided to go back. We met, or I called someone who I knew from my time at this anti-corruption NGO, Transparency International, which, as it turns out, is very corrupt at the top, but they're good people in the lower echelons. And I had known Wolfgang Wodak from my work at that NGO. I was the leader of the working group for justice, and I was going to introduce a real law of evidence into the German law, because in Germany there is no real law of evidence. There's not even everybody's used to, when they're watching American law shows, they're always seeing this court reporter in the room. There is no such thing in Germany, because it's the judge who either records what's happening or he doesn't, and you only get to see his notes, or his notes after the trial has been or has ended through a judgment. So that's what I was doing. That's how I know Wolfgang Wodak. And he, when I called him, I said, Wolfgang, I think Inca and I are going to come back. You, as a doctor, what do you make of this situation? And he agreed. He said, this is not normal. This is not a pandemic. This is probably nothing but a mild flu. And he connected me because I knew that I wouldn't be able to get anything done if I didn't have any help. And I needed another attorney, but at least one attorney. But there was no one out there at that time who was willing to stick their neck out. So he connected me with friend Viviane Fischer, and he said, "Well, she's going to help you because she has no fear, and I think she had just been very successful with a petition which was signed by 80,000 people or so." So I got in touch with her when I came back. We returned to Germany in early June. I immediately met her in Berlin. Drove by train from Göttingen to Berlin, and I thought, this is a weird person, but as long as she's going to do what needs to be done, let's do it. Yeah. She and I then discussed what we're going to do. Wolfgang suggested I was going to do this international conference over an extended weekend, but both of them said, no, this is not enough. What we're really going to have to do is what the government should do, what the Bundestag should do, and then that is set up an investigative committee, and that's what we did. This is how it all started.
So it was really, you innocently really thought if you came forward with evidence, rational heads would prevail. That was it. That's extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah. I think we were the same here in Australia, and yet it's simply not the case. There's something really dark behind all of this, and they don't get... Do you think that the people behind all of this, whatever's happening, the reason they justify it and can live with themselves is they have a vision for a world that they're heading for, which is different from today, where maybe a lot of us aren't there, or something like that? They've got a vision that they're heading for, and they've accepted the fact that there will be carnage between us and that.
Yes, to a degree, I agree with that. I think, I'm a rational lawyer. I have more than 30 years of experience as a trial lawyer, but because of what's been happening over the last 6 years, I have, and I'm not a religious person. I do not believe in organized religion because to me this is all about power. This is not to say that people who are members of organized religion are bad people. Not at all. Some of my very, very, very dear and very strong supporters are, for example, are members of the Catholic Church. There's a nun in Portugal who's been supporting me. There's Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, a very intelligent man. I would almost call him a friend. Very, very good man. But I personally, that's one of the reasons why we lived on that ranch in Northern California. It's surrounded by, there's no one there except us, only nature. And it's on a little hill, on a little knoll actually, which is where the Indians used to wait for the buffaloes to come by. Wow. And you can still find arrowheads and stuff. Wow. And to me, their view of the world, which is that there's a great spirit, and of course it's a benevolent spirit. It doesn't tell us what to do and not to do. It doesn't threaten us. It's the great spirit that connects us all, and that's inside everything within the trees and animals and the universe, etc. That makes much more sense to me. But what I have come to understand, reading the works of, for example, Rudolf Steiner, but also looking at what a famous German pastor wrote, who was killed in the days before the end of World War II in a concentration camp, I believe what Rudolf Steiner says. He says at least 1/3 of the population that walks the earth is not really humans. They look like humans, but they have no soul. Now, if you looked at the problem from a scientific standpoint. The psychologists and psychiatrists would probably call them psychopaths, but I call them monsters. And he says they don't have a soul. There's no inner core. They are being run from outside. There is nothing in them. And then, if you also take into account what Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote about when he died, I think he wrote, shortly before he died, he wrote a letter to his fiancée, and he said, the real problem is not the people who are running the show. It's all these people, the puppets, who play along. Because without them, this wouldn't be possible. They are utterly stupid. It's stupidity. And so if maybe there's another 1/3 of the population that fits this bill, I think it's probably more, then that's what we're dealing with. But here's the thing. Things have shifted, at least over the last couple of months. It started with Keir Starmer being more or less kicked out of office, and the next in line is Friedrich Merz. He's the chancellor, German chancellor. He's collapsing right before our very eyes. It is as though we're watching in slow motion, as though we're watching a car crash. You don't want to see it, but you can't really avert your eyes. He is collapsing right now. His popularity rate is, according to the polls, is down to 12 or 13%. It's the lowest ever recorded for anyone. He's going to lose all the state elections, the upcoming state elections. It's going to start on September the 6th in the eastern states of Germany, because they still remember what totalitarianism looks like. It's only one generation ago. For us in the western part of the country, it's 3 generations ago, and most of us don't remember it. But here's the thing. There's us on this side of the fence, and then there's the others on the other side of the fence. But most of us have not been jabbed. Most of us can still make up their own minds, look at evidence, and use their own reasoning to come to a decision. That's not true for the other side of the fence. And that's why I believe that we're right now not just witnessing the collapse of the deep state, but we're also seeing the beginning of a kind of a new world. I tend to believe, in accordance with with Rudolf Steiner and, of course, the North American Indians, I tend to believe that there is a higher power out there, and then there's, of course, a very dark power. But the dark power, as far as I'm concerned, from looking at what's going on currently, the dark powers have lost their power, and now it's up to us to push them over the edge.
I'm seeing the same in Australia. Our major parties, Liberal and Labor, are also struggling. Liberal Party is basically kaput. And One Nation, this right-wing party, is seen as a right-wing party, is rising up, and it's seen as the orange wave. And we're seeing this all over the world, like with the Italian Prime Minister and in Argentina. But I just want to get back to you for a second. And I just want to empathize with you, because I'm just seeing that ranch in my head. And there's a film out at the moment called The Odyssey. And it's all back in time, written by Homer, of course. But so many people on the planet now are going through their own odysseys. And it's not a journey. It's a complete challenge of everything you believe. You have to go deep into your character to discover who I am, what do I actually stand for, what am I prepared to die for. And you are going through an immense odyssey. So can I ask you, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to get personal, how have you changed from the person who had never even heard of COVID to the man that I'm talking to now?
Well, maybe I think there's 2 things basically. One is I am much more focused on priorities. You know, when I first met my wife, this is in 2008, I was caught in a very bad marriage. It was all about money. We had many cars, we had many homes, we had a home on the island of Mallorca, but it was all about money, and I was working my ass off. but I didn't like my life. And that's when I met my now wife, Inka, and she saw something in me which even I had forgotten. And she said, if we're going to be together, you're going to have to get out of that rat race because I want a real life with you. So we're going to have to downsize the firm, the law firm, and we're going to have to spend time together. And slowly but surely, I did that. So that's now this is even more important to me. Money doesn't matter because pretty soon we're not going to need any. Because if you don't pay any taxes any longer, and you don't pay for energy because there's free energy, that solves part of that problem. But the other thing that a major change is probably also that I've become more and more aware of the spirituality which I just tried to describe.
Yes.
In probably not very adequate terms, but in the fact that there is a higher power, and that this higher power is something that connects us all, and that's what's going to make all the difference. Because those of us who will get through this, us on this side of the fence, we all agree that it's not about money, but it's about us collaborating, True democracy is bottom up, not top down.
Yes.
So this globalism bullshit is going to disappear.
Yes.
It all starts in our families, then come the communities, and then comes the country. We need to, the EU is a construct. It's a deep state construct, and it was designed in order to be the first, mini one world government. And if that works, then there would be a real one world government run not by the EU, of course, but by the United Nations. But this is all coming apart now. The EU is dissolving. The United Nations has become irrelevant. So it's all coming apart. So this is the second major change, if you want to call it that I have become much more aware of this type of spirituality, which I connect with the North American Indians' way of looking at life, the Great Spirit, etc.
Yeah, it's interesting. Since you've been in jail, it's happening. I hear people talking all the time now about finally that people are waking up in droves. It's
Yes.
I see it as an exodus, and people are realizing they've got no agency in the modern social contracts, and they're looking for something different. And it's happening in America. I'm seeing that people are living in their cars and hitting the road. They're looking for a society that is going to be more conducive to their souls, because the one that we're being offered by our governments, we can see is not. All we do is lose. And it's really beautiful. I actually think pain is essential and suffering is essential for you to learn. I've actually got, I've got a belief that there is a God too. I'm not a believer in the mainstream religions, but I do believe there is a God. I actually believe he's imperfect, because there's no perfection anywhere. Everything, because perfection is a destination. We're always growing. So I actually feel we're in a war, a spiritual war now, and the future is undecided. And you are one of the greatest warriors of that in that time. And to talk to you now, I didn't know who I was going to talk to. I didn't know whether you were going to be despondent or just trying your best to put on a brave face. But I hear real hope in your tone. I hear real fire in your belly. And is this new, or has it never gone out, even no matter what they've done to you?
It has never gone out, and that
Wow.
has to do with the fact that I'm here in prison, because if you show any weakness in prison, then you're a dead man. Not necessarily always, but in many cases, either the correctional officers will make use of that weakness. I'm not saying that this is the rule, especially here in this prison where I am right now. People are most of there's a few exceptions who are sadists, but most of the correctional officers are really nice. Some of them have even read the book that was written about this case.
Wow.
And they just can't believe it. But there's also the fellow inmates. Most of them don't know what's going on, because between 80 and 90% of the inmates here are migrants from other countries who hardly speak any German, let alone can read or write. And I would say between 70 and 80% of the inmates here are drug addicts. Some of them are trying to kick that habit, but since there's literally, in none of the prisons here, there's literally no effective health care, there is nothing that can be done about it. In fact, in all of the German prisons, 5 or 6 of them one of them has been closed down recently, and the other 4 are under scrutiny. Some of the correctional officers were arrested because what's happening, you can buy any drug here. You can buy cell phones for 1,500 euros, and so there's a problem obviously inside these prisons. Prisons, to me, do not make any sense. They do not serve any purpose except that they're a money-making machine.
Yeah.
But what really happens is that people who are, and there's at least 25% or so of the inmates who are either truly innocent, like me, I'm just a political prisoner, or who should receive medical care, therapy or something. This is at least 25 to 30%. But then there's some people in here who are in here for murder. For example, you may have read about this. There's this guy who a couple of weeks ago killed 6 people.
Yes.
A man from Turkey, but he grew up in Germany. He killed 6 people. Then he stayed here for a couple of weeks, and allegedly he killed himself. We don't believe it. We believe something else happened, because he was going to expose the government of Lower Saxony, which, according to him, is deeply involved with child trafficking, pedophilia.
Oh, wow.
It's the SPD party. And there's at least one of the major university hospitals, this one in Hanover, that is also involved in this. So that's why you can't show any weakness here.
Yeah, I guess.
I never even shed a tear when my mother died, because I told myself you're gonna have to survive this, and you can when you get out of here, then I can probably break out in tears and do something. This is when my father died. My mother and father were scuba diving at the Great Barrier Reef in 2006, and my father suffered a heart attack. And my mother called me. I was in Germany, of course. I was about to go to court, and she told me about it, and I couldn't believe it. And I refused to believe it for 3 full months. I just kept on working around the clock, and then I collapsed. And of course, I couldn't stop crying. And this is probably what's going to catch up with me, but only when I get out of here, not before that.
Yeah, I understand. So you are with the general population now then? Or you're not isolated as much anymore?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Are you with the general population now in jails? You're in the general population walking around, or do they still have you isolated?
No, this is different. This is, in this prison, I'm free to talk to the other inmates. You are locked up in your cells from 6:30 p.m. until 6 the next morning during the week. And on the weekends, you can sleep in until 8 a.m. And then they open your cells at 6, then you have about an hour for breakfast and showering, etc. Then they lock you up again, and 2 hours later at 9, you get your what is called free hour. This is when you do your rounds in the prison courtyard. Then they lock you up again at 11. They also give you lunch, and you keep they keep you locked up until 4:30. Then they open the cells again, and they leave them open until 6:30. So there is enough time to talk to the fellow prisoners. But I use most of my time. I stay in my cell anyway because I use most of my time to either work for other inmates. If you might, some of the inmates just can't read or write, so I help them with their motions to do this and that, or I write.
Oh, it's ended. The call ended then. I didn't press it off. The call just ended.
This is him again. Tap, tap.
Hello.
Michael, this is Reiner again.
Yeah, how you going? I just set up the recording thing again. Hold on. Yeah, you dropped out. I called Seba and said, look, we've done the interview. That was great, but I didn't know whether you'd be allowed to call back.
No, I can always call back, but it's not. This is probably a technical problem because this internal prison phone company called Telio is so shitty that it is quite normal that it always collapses.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm just glad you called back. Listen.
Sure.
What I'm really interested in is you sound, you've got the fire in your belly. You sound very hopeful and determined, which I think is fantastic. But where do you see the hope for us going forward? I've seen you see the rising up. The deep state is collapsing, but there's still a lot of people that are like non-player characters, and we get staggered by that. Is there any sense in you that something great is going to happen? Because we've had so many revelations, and that we thought would see it all come toppling down, and it's there. I know you've talked about the counselor, the German counselor. I can't remember the name. The German leader is, the German leader is in trouble and stuff like this. But where do you see it inside of you? It must be something to keep you going, you know. And I know I've covered this before, but I think prison to most people is such a devastating, almost a horror. It's almost like a living nightmare to be in it, and from here you are, and all you've done is what you've said. You've just followed your heart, really. You've just done what you think you should have done what your father would have. I believe your father would have said, "Keep going." You know, I see all this. Yeah. But you're such a leader of us now, and I actually feel like I'm speaking to a leader of the movement. And where do you see the hope of us going forward? Is it all the people rising up? Is it the supporters? Is it finally humanity itself will decide that there's something about being a human that's worth more than just money?
Yes, that's it. It is. That's what it's really about humanity. It has nothing to do with money. I have over the 2 years and 9.5 months or so, I have really and truly come to the conclusion that all this materialism is just a substitute what makes us human. And what makes us human has nothing to do with that materialism. It has to do with, well, I love my wife, for example. She is the love of my life. I've known this for quite a while, or else I wouldn't have married her. But there's also all this support from so many people who don't just, they're not just going through the motions, but in most of these cases, when I look at the letters and stuff, they really mean it. They really are, even though we don't know each other, not in real life at least. I mean, when I'm outside of prison, it almost feels as though they're friends. And that's what makes the difference. That's why I'm saying we need to start over again with an entirely new system. This system cannot be fixed. It is totally broken. We have to start with our families and our communities. It is our communities that have to decide how they want to live, what kind of school system they want, what kind of health care they want, et cetera, et cetera. And then connect with all the others to exchange the best ideas or so. That's what democracy is really about, and that's what humanity should be about. Helping each other, supporting each other whenever it's necessary, having fun together. That's what counts. Not how much money someone has, or how many cars they have, or how many homes they have.
Yeah.
And another really, really important aspect of this is, and this is also something I learned from my father when he told Rita, my sister, and me, look at this statue. He's facing the Dome, which is that church in Germany. We are free Hanseatic people from Bremen, because Bremen is a member of, or was in the 14 and 1500s, it was a member of the Hanseatic League. And we are free people. Nobody tells us what to do. We do not bow to anyone. We don't accept any orders, and we do not accept any medals of honor or something, because that would always imply that someone is above us and is so nice and kind and benevolent that he thinks us worthy of this medal. No one is above us. We are our own people. We're ourselves strong enough. We are much stronger than most people probably understand. I don't know if he ever spoke to the American Indians, but at that time, that's what he told us. And that's what I truly believe. And this is what I'm seeing as well. And I think you can see it in Australia, because many of the people who write me from Australia, I don't want to name any names here, but many of them explain to me that things are shifting even there.
Oh, yes.
Not just politically, but also there's more and more people who want to know about the pandemic. They want to know what really happened. And it is very suspicious. Many people think it is very suspicious that the governments, the deep state governments all over the world are trying to keep a lid on this, on the truth about the pandemic. And why is that? Well, because if they understand what has been done to them, that these people, both the monsters, most of them are behind the scenes, like Bill Gates and others, or Fauci, for that matter. By the way, he started the firing shot for this, because his appearance before the American Senate was such a disaster that people are now even more interested in finding out what really happened. But it would open Pandora's box, because once the people understand that they've been lied to by the people who tried to kill them, deliberately kill them, they will ask questions about the Ukraine war, about the climate hoax, about 9/11, the Kennedy murders, etc., etc.
Yeah, this is what's happening. There's, I think Joe Rogan put it best, before, since COVID, now he doesn't even know we landed on the moon. Basically, I interview people all the time, and everybody is basically, no one knows what the truth is anymore. Everyone's becoming agnostic. Everything is up for grabs. The young people talk about flat Earth, and everything is up for grabs. What's going on in Australia is the identity of the country itself. We used to think we were just like Paul Hogan in Crocodile Dundee and the soldiers from the First World War. And it turned out that wasn't the case. There's a great comedian over here who said when they first went with the lockdowns, he always thought he'd be someone who would hide Anne Frank. Instead, because he couldn't go to the pub for a beer, he was pointing out Anne Frank. She's over there, and it really challenged him as a character. Who am I? And I think this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing an exodus of people looking for something better, but realizing we're built to be redeemed. Redemption is a big part of the human journey, and we can all go, okay, we got duped, we got conned. There are real evil forces behind this. Who knows what they're up to? But we can come back, and we can leave a better world to our children. And to do that, we have to talk. We have to identify problems. And do you think that's why they're after free speech, why they won't debate, is because they realize that once we start talking to each other, once we start identifying the problems, once we realize the power we have, that they don't stand a chance against us?
Absolutely. There is no other explanation for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's extraordinary. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the Australian people while we have you here on the second call?
Well, only two things. Never give up, and I promise there will be justice for each and every one of us. There will be justice, because I believe my father was right when he said there cannot be peace and there cannot be freedom without justice.
Yeah, I agree with that. Another thing you'd mentioned about that there will be Nuremberg trials, Nuremberg number 2 trials.
2.0.
2.0, yeah. Because over here, one of our great doctors, Miley Trin, she saved a woman's life with ivermectin while it was still legal, and she's been deregistered because of it, suspended. They're treating her terribly. It's a long persecution. And one of the magistrates said in the court, the Nuremberg laws are no longer pertinent in Australia. He said that in court on this. So the people are asking, who is going to run the Nuremberg trials, do you think, once we reach there?
Well, here's the thing. When I was still with the Corona Investigative Committee, after I had finally understood, this is actually in late 2020, I had just interviewed a German professor of microbiology, and she had explained to us that the PCR test has been misused in order to create cases that didn't exist, in order to spread panic among the people. That's when I realized that all of the interviews that we were doing would provide perfect evidence in a civil or criminal trial.
Wow.
So that's why we decided to do it was not my idea. It was my idea to show the people how it can be done, how we can hold the monsters and their puppets accountable. And it was my friend Anna Garner from New Mexico in the United States who said, why not use the grand jury investigation as a model? And that's why we called what we did. We started this in late 2021, and I think it took us a couple of months or so. That's why we called this a model, because it wasn't real, but we called it a model grand jury investigation. And we used many of the witnesses whom we had interviewed, like Professor Bhakti, Dr. Mike Yeadon, and many others, many famous people, highly regarded, highly renowned scientists, including Vera Sharaf, who's a survivor of the Holocaust, a very good friend of mine. And they testified. We asked the questions. We had real international attorneys from France, the United States, India, everywhere, plus a real judge who was running the show from Portugal, and we had real experts, plus real witnesses who had suffered, for example, whose businesses were destroyed because of the lockdowns, so that Amazon would be able to take over, or others who had suffered very serious harm because of the shots. So this was done back then in order to show the people how it can be done. We're going to do it again. Only this time it's not going to be a model proceeding, but it's going to be real. And it's up to us, the people, to decide what kind of substantive law to use, and we're going to do it just like they did during the original Nuremberg trials. It wasn't just one trial, it was, I think, 13 or 14, right after the war. We're going to use natural law, because everybody understands natural law, because it's only a question of what's right and what's wrong.
Yes.
And for procedural law, we're going to once again use probably the American grand jury investigation. And this time it's going to be the real thing. And we believe that many millions, maybe even many more than just millions, will be watching this. We have already set up a tool that will make it possible for us to have our viewers, because the general public will be the jury, vote on whether or not this is enough evidence to hold them to account both criminally and civilly. Criminal law, as far as I'm concerned, is not very useful. It's civil law, it's civil tort law that evolved from criminal law, because under criminal law, originally it was only somebody was found guilty for having committed theft or something, they would chop off their hands. Somebody would be found guilty of having either gravely damaged someone or even killed someone, chop off their heads. Now that's as though you're using a club, but civil tort law, which evolved from this, is more like a precision instrument that hurts the people, the perpetrator of a crime, or to say it in civil law terms, a tort, where it hurts the most. And it doesn't kill people, it doesn't incarcerate them, but it forces them to pay damages. And what we intend to do is take everything, I mean everything, from those who are responsible. Bill Gates will owe nothing and will be very happy, according to what's this other idiot, what this guy said at the helm of the World Economic Forum.
Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, I know. I just still can't believe he's in power, or he got to the power he did. Is there anything we, the community, can do? Because over here in Australia, the freedom movement started with gusto. We've gone through infighting and stuff like this, but I think this is natural because people are passionately trying to figure out what to do, and they're getting agitated. But there's, with only the freedom movement, there's all these other people waking up. We have major reporters who used to work for MSN have now become podcasters on our side, and we're a bit suspicious of them, but they seem to be legit. Is there anything we can do from your perspective to help in this, to help in turning the tide and making sure the tide remains turned?
Yeah, make sure to spread the word, not just about my case and what I'm doing about it, because I hope this is going to be motivating, but also spread the word about all the other cases in Australia, like the woman doctor who you just spoke about.
Yeah, Dr.
Yes, exactly. Because this is what they don't want to happen. They want to keep a lid on this. Most people from the mainstream media, at least here in Germany, Germany is the most fucked up country in all of Europe, in all of the European Union, that is. Yeah. But most people on the other side of the fence don't even know about my case. Everyone on our side of the fence does know it. But the more people on the other side of the fence understand what's been happening, the greater the chance that at least some of them, even though they may have more or less slept until now, the greater the chance that at least some of them are going to cross over to our side of the fence and help us. Just as I was hoping this would happen at the Supreme Court, but it will happen, I know that, and it is happening, because in some of the cases, there's more than 1,000 doctors in this country who only adhere to the Hippocratic Oath and saved their patients from the shots or from having to wear masks, etc., etc. More than 1,000 of these doctors are either incarcerated and or lost their licenses to practice medicine. And then there's the example of the guy, you may have heard of him. His name is Jacques Baud. He's a former colonel of the Swiss Army. And all of a sudden he came out and criticized the EU for what they were doing in Ukraine, prolonging the war, getting more people killed, not even thinking about how this war had started. It wasn't the Russians, it was the Ukrainians and NATO, of course. But he, without even any criminal charges, without even a trial, was sanctioned by the EU president, a woman who was never elected into any office, who is now being criminally investigated because of the corruption in connection with the purchase of billions of dollars of vaccines. Now, this woman decided this guy needs to be demonetized. He's lost everything. They took away his all of his assets, his income, and anyone who tried to help him by, for example, donating money so that he could buy some food or pay for his rent, was also threatened. He's still surviving, but those are the stories that need to be told to the general public so that they will understand that if they do not stand up and fight, they're going to be dead, either because of transhumanism or because of the totalitarian bullshit that they're trying out on us.
Yeah.
So if they can put me in jail, they could put anyone in jail.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's the shocking thing. I mean, you're such a powerful lawyer. That's why I think stunned us all. Can you just spell that gentleman's name again? I'd love to reach out to him.
Yeah, his first name is Jacques. He's from the probably French-speaking part of Switzerland. Jacques, that's spelled Jacqueue. Yeah. Jacqueus.
Yeah.
And his last name is Baude. That's spelled Baude, if I remember correctly.
Okay, I'll try to reach out to him. Yeah, these are the stories. We're hearing it from Canada. We've seen it in Australia. There's ASIO over here has new powers now that they could arrest someone like me. And I'm not allowed to tell anyone I've been arrested. I'm not allowed a lawyer. They could arrest my elderly parents, and and question them for, I can't remember the amount of time, but it's quite extraordinary. Powers that the Stasi would have loved to have had, and now that these powers are here. Bill Gates over here is vaccinating penguins. We have these against the bird flu. We're just, the whole country is mocking it and laughing at it, but the powerful are still proceeding with it. And so there's an undeclared civil war going on in Australia that seems to be going on in the Western world between those who want to defend common sense and those who don't. Those who are trying to laminate us with a reality that is not based on any facts. You know, it's just crazy. Men can become women because they got a $78 contract from the government. I mean, it's just the madness that we're facing here. And around us too, everybody, there's still people dropping dead. Young people, athletes still are dying in their sleep. It's almost like we're in a death camp. And all we ever hear from the doctors is everyone's baffled. So I don't believe we're there yet, but I do believe that we have a chance. I think we have a real chance if people just say no and stand up for what's right and basically follow the compass in their souls, which is what I think it's here for. And this is something about you, because I remember when you first started, when you were doing the committee, I was interviewing people here, and I just thought, these guys have it in the bag. These guys are the ones that are going to win this. Reiner is brilliant. They're doing the interviews in the correct way. You know, the rest of us were just ad hoc. And so it has been quite slightly darker in the world after your arrest, if you know what I mean. It was like, whoa. But to hear you now is it's goosebumps, brother. It's to hear your spirit, to hear your fight. Yeah, I didn't know who I was going to talk. I didn't know who I was going to meet. Whether you'd be, broken. And I've seen you do other interviews, but to hear you personally speak like this, you're giving a lot of hope here, and I can't wait to share the interview. I really can't. And even really last night, I'll tell you something profound happened last night. And I don't know if they've shared it with you yet. We actually went live. We're not live now, but we went live last night, and we ended up calling the show Waiting for Reiner because you couldn't get through. And At one point, I said to one of our viewers, I said, who's the songwriter, I said, you should write a song called Waiting for Reiner. By the end of the show, he'd done it. Now it's doing really well on the socials, and where people are raving about it. We're going to put videos to it, so we'll probably send it across to see if you could use it for raising funds. But what it is ordinary people. This man works in a service station, and he's inspired enough, even though you didn't turn up, he's inspired enough to join the fight, and that's where I see the hope, Reiner, and that's what you bring out in people, you know.
I'm very glad and also honored to hear this. This is really what it's all about. This is, to once again answer your question, it's about humans acting like humans. It's about us, and we have the power because we are the people. We have everything on this side of the fence. The others have nothing, and that's why they envy us, and that's why they're so aggressively trying to kill us. So the only thing I can say is, with reference, for example, to the Canadian truckers, keep on trucking. Can't lose.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know, but the truckers, the Canadian truckers, inspired something over here. People went to Canberra from all over Australia at their own volition. Well over 1 million people got to Canberra, and MSM wouldn't cover it, and a lot of people didn't know it happened. But this is what, and they came for freedom. They didn't. There's no way MSN and the powerful could have motivated that many Australians to leave their homes, drive the thousands of kilometres to Canberra to get the booster. They came for freedom. And can I ask you now, and probably this is a great place to wrap it up for now, what are your thoughts on freedom? Because I actually often ask people, how would you define freedom? Like a T-shirt, the power of freedom. And a Polish woman who fought in solidarity, she said the best way to describe freedom is leave me the fuck alone. And she was like 80 years old, and I just thought, wow, that's fantastic. But what is your thoughts on freedom? Because you've had it taken away, you're in prison. What are your thoughts on freedom, how important it is, and why we must fight for it, even die for it?
That woman is absolutely correct. Leave me the fuck alone sums it all up, because we do not need any laws. All of us know what is right and wrong and what is good and what's evil. There's only one rule, and that's the rule that the Hippocratic Oath describes. Do no harm. Yeah. Anything else is fine. We can do what we want. No one tells us what to do and what not to do. Absolutely no one.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's a way to go. I'm going to wrap it up there and get this interview up here and get it out everywhere we can. Is there one more time? Is there anything else you could do from the communities in Australia who would like to support you, apart from sharing anything like this? Would you still like letters being written to you and stuff like that?
This is, there's nothing else I can ask. As long as you spread the word in order to make as many people as possible aware of what's happening, not just in my case, but also in all the other cases, that's going to do the trick. There's nothing else that needs to be done. Just don't give up, because things are changing. Most of us can see it now.
Yeah, I agree. I can see it too. I'm very honoured to be actually even talk to you. So it's I'm a bit of a fan. So if I've screwed up the questions, it's because when the first time I met you, just for some humour, we were in a tiny little country town. The towns were all masked up. People were terrified. The country was like it had been overtaken, and the people seemed broken. And suddenly we got a call to say Reiner Fuellmich will do an interview with you in about an hour. And we had to race around this town that wouldn't let us, none of the shops would let us in because we wouldn't wear masks. And we finally found a tiny little pub that would let us sit in the rear corner of this pub. And a small group of people basically met up there just to hear from you. And so this is in a
Wow.
tiny town you never heard. There was, in the same town, there was a banner on the wall from the crazy people that was saying, Jesus wants you to get the jab. So that's 2,000 years they waited for that message. They had a big banner. This is where we were. It was a really crazy time. But you had a profound effect there before you were even in jail. So, and you've done the same effect now, even where you are. So you've given me great hope, and I can't wait to share the hope with the rest of the community. So I thank you for not giving up. I thank you for leading by example. I can see with the loss of your parents, the loss of your freedom, that they're trying to break you, and the fact that they haven't broken you yet is gives us all strength. I just want to tell you how much I admire your courage.
I am very grateful for you having me on your show, and it is, as I said, this is probably a watershed moment right now, or else I wouldn't be talking like this. But this is something that is only partly explainable, explicable by way of rational thinking. The rest is the more important part of why I am able to do this and why I'm so upbeat or optimistic, is that there is this spiritual side. It probably doesn't matter if you call it God or the Great Spirit, but there is this force, this good force that is now helping us, and the bad forces have lost all their power. All we have to do is push them over the edge, and this is what's happening now. This is the end for the monsters and their puppets. It's the beginning for us, humanity.
So the dawn is here. That last question I'll ask you, I think other podcasters in Australia will probably wanting to reach out. Are you fine with that?
Absolutely.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, my captain, I thank you for this interview. I'm going to get it up now, and I'm going to share the living hell out of it. And I thank you again. And I wish you the best in your day, and let's go from there. And I hope to hear from you again and maybe meet you one day. Yeah.
We'll stay in touch. Michael. Thanks again, and thank you, everyone.
No worries. Thank you so much. Take care, Reiner. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Took you past the courthouse gate with winter on the stone. You raised your voice when others bowed and faced the cell alone. A folded letter in your coat, a photograph of home. The guards can lock an iron door, but they can't own what you've known. We're waiting on Reiner, a good man standing tall, for every hand that would not bend, for every voice they stall. The years may mark the calendar, the walls may hide your face, but truth is walking toward you still, and freedom knows your name. Your mother keeps the kitchen lights until the morning train. Your brother reads the news aloud and says your name again. A little flag beside the sink, a cup you used to hold. Small things become a kind of oath when courage has a cost. We're waiting on Reiner, a good man standing tall, for every hand that would not bend, for every voice they stall. The years may mark the calendar, the walls may hide your face, truth is walking toward you still. And freedom knows your name. No tyrant writes the final line. No prison seals the sky. A nation hears the quiet ones who chose not to comply. And when the heavy doors swing wide, we'll meet you in the rain, not as a symbol carved in stone, but as our friend again. We're waiting on Reiner, a good man standing tall. You kept your heart when power came to make the brave feel small. The years may mark the calendar, the walls may hide your face, but truth has crossed the border now, and freedom knows your name. Keep the kitchen light on, keep one place beside the flame. We're waiting on Reiner, and freedom knows your name.